Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom with the CBC Evening News. In our top story tonight, we hear that Prime Minister Fendel Stewart has extended condolences to the government and people of Cuba following the passing of that country's former president, Fidel Castro. He says Mr. Castro's death marks the passing of an indomitable figure who changed the course of history in his country and the region. Mr. Stewart says Fidel Castro represents a symbol of anti-imperialism and continuous struggle for independence, who inspired revolutionaries around the world to fight for their ideals. The Prime Minister also highlighted Castro's support for the anti-apartheid struggle as an unforgettable dimension of his legacy. He recalls Mr. Castro's efforts to promote cooperation in health and education, which saw several Barbadians being able to have their eyesight restored or to pursue post-secondary studies in a wide range of areas. Meantime, opposition leader Mia Mottley says Castro was one of the most iconic leaders of the 20th century. She described him as courageous, especially in the face of several efforts to remove him by any means necessary. The BLP leader says to stand up against the most powerful nation in the world 90 miles away for decades is an unbelievable feat. She also highlighted unprecedented developments in health and education, which occurred under his leadership, giving hope to millions of Cubans. Well, 9 days of official mourning have been declared in Cuba following Castro's death. Castro, who led the country for nearly half a century, died last night at the age of 90. His reign over Cuba was marked by the U.S.-backed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961 and the Cuban Missile Crisis a year later that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. On the streets of Havana, Cubans were shocked on hearing of Castro's death, and while some have been mourning, others have been rejoicing at the news of the former leader's death.
Today is a bittersweet day because I'm happy he's dead. I'm happy he's gone. But he was never tried in a court of law for all of his crimes against humanity. And I disagree with much of what your previous guest had to say. I don't think much of what he said is true at all.
Give us just a sense for viewers of what your family went through.
Well, very early on, freedom of expression became impossible. Freedom of assembly became impossible. Private property was outlawed. But worse than that, anyone who disagreed, and I had many family members who disagreed with the policies of Fidel Castro, anyone who disagreed would be imprisoned for many years, in some cases tortured or executed. And I've had relatives imprisoned, tortured, executed. They also separated hundreds of thousands of families. And for instance, when I left at the age of 11, I left without my parents. The Castro regime would not allow my parents to leave. It took my mother 3.5 years to finally reunite with us. They never allowed my father to leave, and I never ever saw him again. But I'm not alone. There are hundreds of thousands of families who experienced the very same thing.
And back at home now, Prime Minister Fendel Stewart has paid tribute to 50 Barbadians awarded this year for the work they've done to help build the country. Prime Minister Stewart was speaking at the start of the dinner and ball at Illawarra Court, one of the marquee events for the independence celebrations. He says the 50 Golden Jubilee awardees have made a rich and enduring contribution to the island over the last 50 years.
There's a tendency sometimes to behave as though all that we have achieved has been achieved by those who have held public office at one time or another over the last 50 years. But there are large numbers of Barbadians, up to now unsung, who have contributed to all that Barbados is today in the year 2016.
Well, as you just heard, 50 outstanding Barbadians were the toast of the evening at Illawarra Court last night during the Prime Minister's dinner and ball.
There's a tendency sometimes to behave as though all that we have achieved has been achieved by those who have held public office at one time or another over the last 50 years.
Oh, we apologize for that incorrect extract. We'll try to get the correct one for you before the end of the news. We'll take a break here, but we'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
From 2015 when they began. I see myself being a manager one day at Sandals Barbados. Working for Sandals got me where I am today. My son is going to a fantastic school, and then being able to pay his school fees, that's most important to me. I don't need to tell anyone as I walk by the streets, everyone knows where I work already. My name is Sherry Ann Charles, hostess here at Sandals Barbados, and I am Sandals. Yesterday, today, tomorrow.
My name is David Allen. I'm a taxi driver. I work for Dover with taxi service. It's a great experience working with Sanders. I'm glad that Sanders came to Barbados, offering the guests some nice scenic tours for our taxi drivers to take them around the island to see the beauty of Barbados. My family feel proud because I'm working with Sanders. I don't have to hustle on the streets, and it's guaranteed work every day.
By consistently providing guests for these tours, Sandals Resorts keeps tour operations lucrative, showcases the beauty of the Caribbean, and boosts regional economies.
This week on Rejoice and Sing, it's our special Independence episode. We will be blessed with the ministry of Paula Hines, Ghazi, Misha Woods,
Sun shall not smite thee by day.
Keisha Rollins, the Garden Quartet. We get up close and personal with Bishop Jerry Seal.
Who is going to step up to begin to frame the next 50 years?
We shine the spotlight on Deborah Rondon.
A part of your great plan.
Don't miss Rejoice and Sing, Sunday, 9:05 p.m. Brought to you by Sewing World Department Store and Black Image for savings, satisfaction, and service.
Oh, the great.
Welcome back. We'll take you back now to the story. As you heard, 50 outstanding Barbadians were the toast of the evening at Illawarra Court last night, and it was during the Prime Minister's dinner and ball. They've made their mark in every area of development in Barbados, from education to sports, business to public service, culture to medicine, and everything in between. These 50, most of whom were at the Prime Minister's residence last evening, say they are deeply humbled and honored to be recognized. Dr. Richard Ishmael is one of those awarded for his outstanding contribution to medicine. The cardiologist was a cadet on parade on that first Independence Day, which makes it this time around even more special.
That was a wonderful experience, and actually what is interesting or very good for me is that I'm going to be marching again on Wednesday morning with the cadets of 66. A group of us that were on the parade, we are also going to be on parade again.
Jennifer Seeley is another. She is known for her work in the arts, but her award came for teaching, from which she just retired after 48 years.
When I think of our achievements in those two sectors with so little resources, I get very, very passionate about it. We say this is a small island with few resources, and we have done so well. There's lots to be proud of in terms of education. There's lots to be proud of in the arts, and I feel blessed.
And stalwart trade unionist Orlando Gabby Scott says the independence struggle was fought for and won on principle, and that's important.
I was a young reporter when in 1965-66. I had just left school, and I really recognized what the Right Excellent Errol Walton Burroughs and people like Sir Frank Walcott were aiming for. And today, 50 years after, we have recognized exactly the significance of it.
Earlier in the night, Prime Minister Stewart greeted VIP guests as they walked the red carpet. For the actual dinner, 5 food stations representing some of the major influences on Barbados' culture provided more than enough tantalizing fare for the foodies among us. And the night of celebration ended in just that manner, with performances from some of the island's most talented, backed by Crossfire. A victory for people involved in development planning. That's how attorney at law Gregory Nichols describes a judgment handed down in the High Court. It was filed back in 2008 by now deceased retired town planner Leonard St. Hill on behalf of 6 Men's Plantation in St. Peter. Madam Justice Jacqueline Cornelius ruled Chief Town Planner Mark Cummings acted in excess of his jurisdiction by dealing with the application as if it were submitted for his determination and consideration. St. Hill claimed the Chief Town Planner refused to allow the claimant to develop his over 200 acres of agricultural land and subdivide it. According to Mr. Nichols, the outcome validates that the rule of law is still strong and Barbadians can depend on the courts to have their matters heard.
Especially for land developments in excess of 2 acres. The late Leonard St. Hill fought a long, hard battle against the planning authorities in Barbados for a number of years, and it is fortuitous that shortly after he died, the High Court came back with a decision in his favor in which he had challenged the authority of the Chief Town Planner to deal with applications in excess of 2 acres of land. This decision given by Madam Justice Cornelius effectively clarifies the law in relation to planning applications.
Up next, we'll have the sports news with the birthday boy, Sean Green.